with several other buildings. Some villagers took what shelter they could, while the Thai government evacuated more than 3,000 people. Cambodia and Thailand have engaged in frequent firefights over the temple, but they've never escalated into all-out war. With both governments accusing each other of aggression, the United States has pleaded with both countries to defuse the standoff. Andrew Potter, Al Jazeera.
Days of torrential rains and widespread flooding have killed at least 5 people in Sri Lanka. Hundreds of thousands of others have also seen their lives disrupted. Now, as Manel Fernandez reports, the country's Disaster Management Center is struggling to cope with the scale of the damage.
The waters raged once again, sweeping everything in their path. Worst hit was the North Central province. Swollen irrigation tanks breaching their banks. One reported to have unleashed around 55,000 cubic acres of water. Many villagers were cut off by the floodwater, boats their only hope. Over 1 million people have been affected, and more than 230,000 have been forced to leave their homes for temporary shelters. In the Central Highlands, authorities issued a landslide alert and declared a state of emergency in some areas.
Our kitchen was buried by a landslide at the back of the house.
It wasn't just people facing hardships. This baby elephant was among the wildlife caught by rising waters. The military and police are helping with the rescue and relief efforts. But despite the devastation, there were some moments of hope. This baby born on a helicopter as her mother was flown to safety. In Colombo, charities are trying to gather food and clothing to send to victims. But they face a major problem delivering this aid, as many roads are impassable. Emergency supplies and food stocks are being loaded up behind me to be taken to the hundreds of thousands of people affected by this latest round of flooding. But it'll take a whole lot more for those affected by this latest disaster to get on their feet again. Manel Fernandez, Al Jazeera, Colombo.
Australia continues to feel the effects of one of the worst ever cyclones to hit the country. The giant storm first struck Queensland, but its impact is now being felt thousands of kilometers away in the southern state of Victoria. Wild storms lashed the city of Melbourne, bringing destructive winds and flash flooding. More than 175 millimeters of rain fell in just a few hours in the area. The trial of 3 U.S. citizens charged with espionage in Iran is due to begin on Sunday. The families of Shane Bauer, Josh Flatal, and Sarah Shord say the 3 were hiking in northern Iraq when they were arrested in July 2009. Tehran initially accused them of illegally crossing into Iran and added spying charges later on. Shord was released on bail in September and returned to the United States. Well, that is all for now here in Washington. I will be back a little later with more news from around the world, but for now, we're going to cross back to Laura in Doha. Laura.
Thanks, Kimberly. Look forward to seeing you again later. Now, still ahead, accident or attack. Security sources say a gas pipeline in Egypt was deliberately blown up, disrupting supplies to Jordan and Israel. And burning anger in Tunisia. Police come under attack amid ongoing tension 3 weeks after the president was ousted.
A popular uprising that shook the country to its core. A defiant president under siege from his people. As the protesters took charge of the streets, we look back at the events that are changing Egypt.
I will stay on the air if I can until the police come.
In a special program, Al Jazeera gives you a day-by-day account from those that witnessed them firsthand. Egypt burning, at this time on Al Jazeera.
Everyone in this city has heard about the release of the Palestine Papers. The debate is becoming extremely heated.
And you can see the amount of security that's been put into place. This is leading to a very tense situation on the streets.
They're saying that the fight can continue for as long as it takes until a radical solution in Tunisia.
There's so many caskets with victims, there's no time to do a proper burial.
And as one man told me, for him, 2011 no longer exists.
Hello again, you're watching Al Jazeera. A reminder of the main developments in Egypt. Protests continuing for a 13th day, but the country's banned opposition party, the Muslim Brotherhood, says it's joining talks with Vice President Omar Suleiman to end the crisis. The opposition had previously rejected all dialogue until President Mubarak steps down. The US envoy to Egypt, Frank Wisner, has backed Mubarak's plan to stay in power until September. But the US State Department is insisting he does not speak for the US government. And Hosni Mubarak's son Gamal and other leaders of the ruling Democratic Party have resigned. The party's new Secretary General, Hossam Badrawi, reportedly has good relations with the opposition figures. Let's take a look now at that man who's been put in top of the NDP. Badrawi is described as a respected member of the party. Now, as a former member of Parliament, he was in charge of education reform, leading some to see him as a liberal. Now, he's a qualified doctor and a professor at Cairo University Medical School. On Friday, he told Al Jazeera he believes pro-democracy demonstrators have been given enough concessions. He said Mubarak cannot step down as it would violate the constitution. Now, Jordanian power plants are running on oil and diesel fuel after the suspension of gas supplies from Egypt. This follows an explosion at a gas terminal in the Sinai Peninsula, which was blamed on a gas leak. But not all Jordanians are convinced. Nisreen El-Shamaila has the story from Amman.
Flames roar hundreds of feet into the sky. An Egyptian gas terminal ablaze. This meant an immediate suspension of gas supplies to neighboring Jordan and Israel. The pipeline in flames supplies gas that is used to generate 80% of Jordan's electricity needs. A real predicament for a resource-poor country. Earlier reports that this was an act of sabotage were then countered by Egyptian officials who claimed the explosion was caused by a gas leak. That's not very convincing here.
I wouldn't be surprised that people who are connected to the Egyptian regime, ordered by the Egyptian regime, were behind this explosion in order to shift the attention from Tahrir Square to the explosion that took place in Sinai.
For now, there is no clear evidence either way, but following weeks of protests demanding economic reforms, pressure mounts on the government to bear the brunt of possible price hikes to avoid further unrest. The suspension of Egyptian gas supplies to Jordan is going to cost the country over $4 million per day. It also comes at a time when the Jordanian government is struggling to ease economic hardships by subsidizing some fuel derivatives. Jordan started importing gas from Egypt 8 years ago. The relationship with President Hosni Mubarak's regime is viewed as a strategic asset. And though officials here have kept quiet, it is believed they privately would rather see Mubarak stay than stand down. Nisreen El-Shamaila, Al Jazeera, Amman.
OK, well, let's see how the latest developments in and outside Egypt are playing out on the internet. And here's Stephanie Scowen with a look at that from our Egypt desk. Stephanie.
Thanks, Laura. Well, sifting through the hundreds of tweets on Twitter about the situation in Egypt, you get a wide variety of opinions being posted and some comments to make you think. Take this one, for example, from Hermanis. She observes, during Mubarak's 30 years as president, there have been 9 Israeli presidents, 3 French and 5 American. Avinunu writes, since Suez in 1956, imperial powers have sought to prevent Egypt being truly independent. That is still the plan. And while it's almost dawn here in Doha, the tweets never stop. UK Curé writes, tweets are feeding the brain and melting the heart, but Mubarak's sound asleep. It's impossible, of course, to say how well the president is sleeping, but one artist has been dreaming of how he sees the new day in Cairo. This cartoon on TwitPics depicts a new dawn over Tahrir Square. The word on the sun reads democracy. Well, as Egypt wakes up, Al Jazeera will be monitoring events throughout the day and bringing you the latest developments. But if you see or hear anything, we'd love to know about it. If you've got video or images of events inside Egypt, you can send them to our media site. The address for that is yourmedia.tv. www.aljazeera.net. And of course, you can check our website for the latest news. The address is www.aljazeera.net/English. You'll find the live blog there, where you can watch the latest videos and get updates throughout the day. But before I hand back